Airtable has just released a new feature that is a new way to edit records in an interface. Now, for ages, we've had the ability to edit our data inline, but this isn't always the most useful way to edit data. So this new feature actually is very, very helpful because now we can require certain fields, do data validation, etc. And what I'm talking about is the new way to edit through a form. I'm going to break this all down for us in this video, so if you're ready to learn about this new feature, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth and this is Gap Consulting. It's our mission here to help you unlock the full potential of Airtable and related no-code tools. And in this video, we're excited to be diving into a new feature from Airtable that allows us to edit information in our interfaces through forms. And as I mentioned already, these forms can be set up to include data validation and required fields, which makes them really, really helpful, especially for allowing your users to go through a very specific or defined way of collecting information. Now, before we hop into the heart of the video, I do want to invite you first to join me for our free Airtable crash course. If you're here thinking that you could learn a lot about how Airtable works, we've put together this free crash course. It'll be delivered to your email inbox over the series of several days, and you can sign up for free at gapconsulting.io/airtable-crash-course. I will include the link wherever you found this video. But now let's jump into the heart of things, and I'm going to start with my database backend. Zooming in here for us, you see it's just a one-table solution. We have the deal name, the company, the stage, the amount, the close date, the deal owner, the next step, and the loss reason. Now, what I want to call out here is that we are going to want to require certain fields under certain conditions. Let's suppose that we're looking at a particular deal, Vertex Data Security here. And right now it's in the qualified stage. But if our sales reps close this out to 1, we want to insist that, well, you have a 1 deal. We want to know when did it close and what was the dollar amount. So these fields right here, amount and close date, let's blank them out for our example. Now, similarly, if this is flipped over to close lost, we want to insist that our sales reps fill out a loss reason. So let's blank this out as well for our example. So now we have the empty fields here. Now, how can we insist this? Well, in the past, we really had no recourse to make sure that certain fields got filled out or were filled out under certain validation rules because of inline editing being the only real edit option. So let's flip over to interfaces now to take a look at how this might have been set up in the older way of doing this. So we could have a view just like this in an interface or an interface page, and we could enable our users to edit this information. Notice that now it says edit records inline right here. That used to just say edit records. Well, we can come in and, of course, allow or enable our sales reps to manipulate this information, and they can close out a project or a lead to closed 1. Just like that, it flips into closed 1, but we've done nothing to make sure that there's an amount filled out or a close date. Same thing with closed loss, right? We've got this now lost deal here. We never had any way of insisting that they validate why we lost this particular deal. And we now have dirty data because we don't have a specific rule around what gets filled out under certain circumstances. And this has been a pain point for many users for quite a while. So let's instead jump into the new way of doing this. This is all handled through this new edit capability in a form. So I have here a standard deal details. So the number one rule here is that when we are enabling this editing through a form, we are doing it in a record detail page. So here I've got my different deals on the left, and we are selecting one of these at a time. And then this part on the right is the actual deal information. This is the deal detail page. And so what we can do here is come in, if we select this overall page, the detail page, now you'll notice that we have the ability to choose how we are editing this information under the user actions. So we have a third option. It was previously either off or editing was turned on, but it's now been renamed to off or inline, inline being the previous way of editing. And now our third option is the form. So let's go ahead and use this option. And it's going to say that an edit button will be added to the record, and all edits need to go through the submitted process through this customizable form. So yes, that's what we want to enable. Let's go ahead and click on that button so that we now see the actual button itself. Now, just like any button in an interface, we can change what the button says. So I can say like edit here, for example. We can change the color within reason. Let's set it to the blue. And of course, we can edit the form. This is the most important part. Now, for our example, we're saying that when we move a deal to closed won, we want to insist that certain information gets filled out, the amount and the date. So let's set that up in our form. I go into edit the form, and I can choose exactly what fields from this table show up here. Now here you see that everything is showing up, and that's okay for now, but let's put some rules on this to make sure that certain information is visible under certain conditions. Now, this is not new because we've been able to edit the forms with conditional visibility for some time now. But given the new option of editing data through the form, this feature becomes so much more powerful. So let's walk through it step by step. Number one, we want to insist the amount and the close date only show up when the stage moves to closed won. So we're going to insist that these pieces are filled out by requiring them, and then we'll set the visibility of these fields to say that the stage is closed won. So this field, the amount, will only now be visible when the deal is marked in the stage closed won, and it will be required to be filled out at that point. Same thing with close date. Let's set up close date exactly the same, where the stage must be closed won, and we will set up the requirement as well. Now, we can also set up some validation, and this is another component of this where we can add a lot of value to make sure that we don't get dirty data in our system. So we might set up a rule like this close date is within the last calendar year, just to make sure that somebody doesn't fat finger the year. Or we might set up a rule that says, look, all of our deals have a minimum threshold of 10,000, let's say. So maybe we can set up a rule that says the amount here must be greater than or equal to 10K. Now, right now, these validation rules unfortunately don't allow us to set up rules with any other fields. I'm hopeful that this might change in the future where we could say, dependent on what the stage is, maybe we can set up validation rules for the amount. But right now, we don't have that functionality here. So the only field that we have access to in the validation rule is the field itself. Now, we can also come in and update the validation message. So we could say must be greater than 10K. And with that, we will go ahead and move on to our next component. So we've set up our rules around what happens when we go into stage closed won. But what about if we lose a deal? We have the closed lost option within our stage as well. And under this condition, we want to make sure that we get a loss reason. We don't want our sales reps to just say, we lost the deal. We want to know why we lost the deal. So let's set up the same thing here. This is only visible when the stage goes to closed lost. And we can say, we can limit the options and we can make it required. And similarly, we can set up validation rules that under certain loss conditions, we have certain validation laws. That doesn't make a ton of sense for this example, so I will leave the validation empty. But you see that we get that same functionality here where we say it's only visible if the stage is moved to closed lost, and that's it. Now, there's one other feature in these forms that I want to call out. This part requires that you're on the business, which is the higher tier within Airtable self-service or enterprise scale. And this particular feature is when we actually show the edit button. So again, only if you're on the higher tiers do you get access to this last feature, but I might want to set up a rule that says, I only want to show this button under certain conditions. So I can go into the button rules. Again, this is the same place where I changed the label and the color, and I can set up visibility rules for when I can allow people to edit the data. So this is really, really helpful now because previously, if we turned on editing inside of a record, we couldn't turn it off under certain conditions, but now we can. So because of the fact that we're going through a form, we can hide that form button under certain conditions. So I might say, look, I only want people to be able to edit these different records if it's in an open stage, but once it's closed, you don't get to edit it anymore. So I can toggle this on and say, only show this button when it is in these open stages, but when it's closed, that button's going to be gone. Again, this is a more premium feature and it does require that you're on that Airtable business plan. So now that we've set this up, let's go ahead and test it and see it in action. I will go ahead and publish the changes to our interface and I will launch out and actually test this with Vertex systems. So number one, going into edit, you'll notice that it looks like it's read-only. I can only click the edit button. And when I get that, the form fills out with the information for this record. It says by default edit record. Of course, I could have changed this. But here you'll notice that all of those conditional fields that we set up, they're not showing up because of the fact that we're in stage qualified. Once I move this, though, to closed one, the amount and the close date become required fields. So now I can't close this deal out unless I put information in. Now we set up a threshold of 10K. So if I go in here with 5K, I'm getting the validation rule that's showing, look, this must be greater than 10K. So maybe I, made a mistake. It was actually a $50,000 deal. Well, now we're good and the validation is checked. Similarly, I might set a close date. If I accidentally fat-fingered this to be 2025, you're going to see again that I'm not able to save the record because the field has failed validation. Now, I didn't set up an actual validation output here, but we could have just as easily done that. So I can't save this until I have the right year in there. It has to be within the same year of the calendar year, and now I can save it. So just like that, we built validation and rules around how people can update this information. And now the Vertex data security example insisted that it had an amount and a close date. Now the exact same thing is true if I wanted to go through any other stage of the process. Now I can update this guy to negotiation, no problem. Because negotiation isn't set up with all those rules, nothing is going to be called out here, but I can then go in one step further and I can set up the closed won or closed lost. Let's say we actually lost this deal. You now see that I have to fill out the loss reason. Maybe it was because we lost to a competitor. I can save that up and now that information's here. Now the last piece to validate is that we cannot edit these records up here because we do not see the button if they are already in the closed won or the closed loss stages. I only have access to edit them if they're in one of the actively open stages like negotiation or proposal sent. That's when the button shows up. Now, if as you were watching, you find yourself thinking that you could use some help implementing this kind of data validation and form editing in your systems, we encourage you to swing by our website because we have a ton of help available, including access to hourly consultants as well as working with us on custom projects. If you're interested, the best first place for you to start is with a free strategy call. You can schedule that at gatconsulting.io/strategy-call, and someone from our team will meet with you and help you put together a plan to move forward with your Airtable build. I hope you got a ton of value from this video. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. But most importantly, keep on building.